All right, good evening. It is 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 28th, City Council meeting. I'd like to introduce the meeting and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Join me in standing for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, we thank you for the beauty of the day. Thank you for the opportunity we have to serve this great community. Pray that you will watch over our discussions and decisions tonight, that we'll do what's good for the greater good of our community and guide our conversations and decisions. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Desiree, roll call.
Yes. Councilmember Bogosian.
Here.
Councilmember Hahn.
Here.
Councilmember Myers.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Streetman.
Here.
Councilmember Popson.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Mayor Powers.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First item is citizens' comments.
We have Ms. Hack.
Okay.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Terry Hack, and I represent the owners of Wild Dunes Resort. My only reason for being here this evening is to take the opportunity to personally thank the council and the city staff for your dedicated service to the city of Isle of Palms, the citizens, and the business owners in 2023. You have dealt with complicated issues with professionalism and fairness. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
We have Jimmy Bernstein. Ms. Bernstein, if you don't mind stating your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to address council.
Okay, I'll be very brief. My name is Jimmy Bernstein. My wife Barbara is here along with some of my neighbors. I live at 13 Beechwood East. I am a resident of Wild Dunes and Isle of Palms, and of course I am here mainly just to put a face to the severe problem that we're facing as homeowners along Beechwood East as well as Dunecrest. I think we are in serious jeopardy of having damage to our property with the erosion of the sand. And I think our plight has been well documented, and I know that the city people have been by. I can only tell you that in the past week, the erosion has been severe. And I know that the council's hands are tied by the state regulations, and it's hard to really imagine what their thinking is. And there was an article written in the Island News about the outdated methods of protecting and renourishing our beach. And I just wanted to implore the council to take action. I think that first off, I know that the current criterion for being in jeopardy is a 20-foot dimension between the ocean and your property. I can only tell you that I think that needs to be expanded, and I know it's not in your power to do, but because the 20 feet can be eroded away in a very short period of time. And in fact, one of my neighbors who went away for Thanksgiving came back and said, "What has happened to it was just gone a week and come back." It's totally different. And when I came down to see Doug and talk to him, if you saw the beach a week or 10 days ago, you wouldn't believe the situation that we're in today. And I think that I could speak for all of the homeowners along Beechwood East. I don't want to be or just point out. I think we're all together in our severe concern over the property that we have, and we've invested our lives in. When I bought my property, which was in 2010, there was, I never even imagined what I would be facing today. And we've been through the hurricanes and the damage and everything, and I just wanted to, again, put a face to our problem. It's overwhelming in its impact. I can tell you in the previous erosion.
Mr. Bernstein, your
Okay.
3 minutes are up. You can quickly wrap up your comments.
In the previous event of the erosion, I think each homeowner spent the equivalent of a fleet of Teslas or Mercedes or something like that, and we had to withstand the entire financial burden. I am really encouraged because I hear that the city is looking at participating and paying for the renourishment. I also am aware of the $10 million grant that's on the other side of the island, and hope that that can be somehow transferred or spent on our side, because everybody's enjoying the beach. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nobody else. We don't have anybody else signed up to
Thank you
speak.
both. Next item is approval of previous meetings minutes. The city council meeting on October 24th, special city council meeting on November 13th, special city council meeting on November 14th, and all the committee meeting minutes are attached.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any edits or comments, changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item is old business, update on emergency beach restoration work between Breach Inlet and 314 Ocean Boulevard and between 12 and 17 Beechwood East. Stephen, you up? Thanks for joining us again.
And Mayor, just to bring a little bit of context of how we're going to, what we've asked Stephen to touch on his update is, we'll first talk about Breach Inlet, current conditions, progress made so far compared to the action from council in October, where funds were approved for the installation of sandbags and funds were approved for continuing scraping sand and bringing in, trucking in beach-compatible sand for a goal of placing up to 50,000 cubic yards. So we'll talk about how that's going. And then we also want to talk about Beechwood East, current conditions, and some recommendations that we would need council action on to address the issues that you've already heard from residents. So Stephen?
Okay, well, thanks for having me down again, and I wish I could come bearing greater news, but Amy, I think, is pulling up some photos and slides that we were able to take today. But things, just generally speaking, focusing on the Breach Inlet side right now, overall, I feel like the erosion pressure is a little better than it was, several weeks ago when we were, losing 10 feet in some nights. I will say the tide events that we've had the past 2 weeks have continued to be much higher than the predicted tides. We've had onshore winds. And in fact, the last neat tide cycle, which is our lower tides, really just got skipped. The water never went out. It stayed. We had multiple days of 7-foot tides and over 7-foot tides. They were running a foot to a foot and a half above the predicted level. Fortunately, starting today and moving through the next 7 to 10 days, both tide and weather are predicted to be much better. So I'm hoping that the next 10 days are going to be a lot more favorable for that end of the island. We've also seen a pretty significant change in the erosion pattern within that area, where the erosion was more severe at the north end. It kind of went to the center part between, say, around 2nd Avenue, and now is actually down further towards the inlet, really right at the corner of the inlet is where we're seeing the most erosion. So the north end has held up fairly well. We have the area of the sandbags in the middle, and I'll show some photos of that. But so these are photos from today. I don't think I have a laser pointer on this, but this is an area with the sandbags behind it. And we've what we've seen is the areas where we've placed bags further landward, they've actually performed a lot better. When we try to build the dune further out than nature wants it to be right now, and then you place bags seaward of that. They wanted to settle into the sand and they would get rolled around a little bit. So while we would love to have a big wide dune and then the bags protecting that, nature just doesn't want that to happen. So we're trying to hold the line, keep as much of a dune as we can while still keeping the bags intact. So we're having to do some maintenance to shift some bags around, pull up bags that have gotten buried in the sand, and that, part of that's the permit.
Yeah, just for context, Steve, what block is that? Is it you know about?
I believe that's the Second Avenue access that's there on the foreground. And then looking to the south from there. A couple other photos. But to sum up the work done to date, we've kind of had three different efforts that we've tried to combine, tried to take advantage of moving the most sand for the least price we can, and hitting the hardest hit areas with the goal of protecting structures. That's our primary goal, is protecting structures, houses and pools, then protecting the dune area, and then protecting public access to the beach. So we're kind of fighting those three things all the time. But we were able to scrape about 45,000 yards of material that we moved within the beach system. So a lot of that came from kind of the southern point and shifted back to the north. Some of it came from seaward of the properties up to the dune. And then we were able to truck in 10,000 yards of sand from an inland source. So that's actually adding sand to the system. And in some cases that works out okay, but much of that sand, much of all the sand that we placed, has eroded. We can go back to the prior image and see what's still there. But the inland option is beneficial in that you're adding sand, but it's also about 4 times the cost per yard of getting that sanded. And so far, we've installed about 800 sandbags. And looking again at this photo, this is looking a little further north. In the areas where the sandbags are there, it's protected that dune fairly well, especially with the weather that we've had the past 2 to 3 weeks. It's not perfect, but it has pretty much held the line. It will require some maintenance occasionally, but is doing the job for the most part. This is looking at the south end. Again, earlier today, you can see the trucked in sand as we're finishing up that 10,000 yards today and maybe into tomorrow. They're actually going to spread that to the south to try to get that distributed a little bit more evenly along all those properties, and we're bringing in more today as well. But that's what it looks like today. And then bigger picture, looking at the entire south end, you see another kind of ridge and runnel system that's working its way down the beach. Long term, that's a good thing. It's adding sand to the beach profile. You can see where there's not a runnel there at the bottom of the image. That sand's already moved up and you have a wider dry sand beach. I expect that as this kind of zippers itself closed over time and it'll work its way to the south, you'll get some temporary erosion as that runnel gets up against the dune, but then overall it'll add some sand to the beach. So I'm optimistic in the long term, but that's still 2 or 3 months down the road. So in the short term, we're still going to have some erosional pressure.
Stephen, are these tides that are happening, is this a new normal, or is it just stars are aligning, unfortunately?
That's a really good question. I was talking to a coworker today, and he's working on some pretty detailed analysis of long-term sea level rise and just overall water levels. It has seemed like it's a trend that the tides increase because of onshore wind or wind coming out of the north, which kind of actually pushes water to the right and can increase water elevations that way. Higher wave energy creates a wave setup that can increase water levels, and even atmospheric pressure. If you have low pressure, there's less weight on the water and it can elevate itself. So it's all those factors plus the sea level rise component. Sea level has been trending faster and faster up in the past 10 years, but you look at the long-term record, it stair steps, it fluctuates when we're talking about the rate, but the last couple of years it's increased faster than it has historically. And that's the thing that everybody kind of looks at the predictions. It's the rate of rise that's really the question. It's been going up for over 100 years, and we can document that very easily. But the projections on how fast it's going to increase is the big question. But so far, the past 5 years have been a higher trend.
The atmospheric pressure, is it like steady at a constant level? I think the sea level should be like 9.92 or something, but, or is it constantly lower or higher?
The atmospheric pressure, that's a weather pattern, you know, a
Right.
week-to-week change, you know, if you have a storm event. So that's a localized, kind of isolated feature. Sea level is measured, and I was talking with Desiree about this earlier today. When you see like sea level and datums and mean lower water, they take the predictions and they use a 19-year record of water levels to predict what the future is going to look like. And if they're using, and I don't know what the last time they updated that rate was, but if it was 40 years ago that they were looking at that 19-year record, if sea level is accelerating faster, then it would shift the water levels higher than those predicted tides, you know, consistently. So there was a day last week where it was lower than predicted, and that can happen with offshore winds. But it's a very complicated process, but it just has been higher. It's kind of
How much higher is it averaged than what the forecasted tide levels should be?
for the past month, most of our tides have been anywhere from half a foot to a foot and a half higher than the predicted tide. And that's just looking at Charleston Harbor.
Which suggests it's a lot more than sea level rise and other things, more.
Right, sea level rise would be a very small component of that, so I don't want to suggest that sea level rise is the principal factor that we're dealing with. It's not, but if you're looking at very long term, it's a component. But essentially, it's
Scott?
weather.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. We're focusing, I know, on the hotspots where we should be. Are you seeing, I don't know if you're looking at any other parts of the island that are seeing deterioration or encroachment that, you know, still might be 50 or 100 feet away, but they've already lost 100 feet of beach? I think we were talking about this at another time, but
Yeah, actually, my last slide kind of shows the entire island, but.
I meant to lead you into that, so.
No, it's
A segue.
I drove the entire island today, and actually anywhere from the pier to about 53rd Avenue is incredibly healthy. Looks very good. There's a wide dry sand beach. It's wider than it's been any time since we've been measuring it. So it's not, you know, consistent across the entire island, and it's actually only a very, if you look at the entire island, there's about 2,500 feet that are kind of in a threatening erosion situation. You have 7 miles of beach, so it's a very small percentage that we're having to deal with, but it's that small percentage that, you know, causes all the problems. But as far as breach inlet goes, our recommendations is we would recommend to truck in a small quantity of sand to try to at least establish a modest dune along that south end so that everybody has some sand as we approach this good weather condition. The contractor is scheduled to be closed around the Christmas week, so we want to kind of have that in mind as we're looking for the into the future. But if we stop trucking in sand, they want to move their equipment off to other projects. They can always bring it back if needed. But I feel like with the weather conditions that we have coming up, a modest effort to add a little bit more sand, monitor it over the next 10 days to 2 weeks, and then if we need to make an effort before that Christmas break to bring in more, we can look at that. Presently, we have enough funds remaining in that allocated amount that I think we should be okay through January, or through December into January, and potentially longer. But we're working towards that big core project, which is the big fix.
And Stephen, any update from the Corps at this point? I know we've been 95% design, we're close, and are we first or Sullivan's first?
Yeah,
So-
it's not out to bid yet. It's in legal review.
Got it.
It should be out to bid very soon. I can't speak for them. Their current bid opening date is projected to be December 29th. With that in mind, I would guess that a contractor probably wouldn't be mobilized and pumping sand till the first part of February
Yeah.
at the earliest. So really, we're looking towards, you know, mid-February before any substantial amount of sand is on the beach.
Got it.
From the
And
Corps.
and still don't know if it's us or Sullivan's first in line?
Yes, that's not
Okay.
something that we can dictate.
Yeah.
We can encourage and beg. And
Which we
will do
have.
that. Yes.
How long will that project take?
It's anticipated to take, what, they say in 5 months
5
or so?
months.
5
to 6
months.
Yeah, it'll be an event, and the later, we'll have to look to that summer, the early summer season as being an impact of construction, and try to minimize that.
And which section of the beach will that cover?
It will cover from 2nd Avenue or 3rd Avenue to 9th Avenue.
Okay.
And then we would look closer to the time, to look at the conditions of the beach to recommend whether the city should supplement that project by shifting some of that sand to areas either further south or working along some of the dune line in that northern area to kind of jumpstart the dune recovery.
Thank you.
Some other recommendations, I think most of this already hit. I think I hit all that, so we'll move over to breach inlet unless there's any other questions on Beechwood. Any other questions on breach?
Just for the record, of the budget that was approved by council of $1,250,000 for the trucking and scraping operation, we have about $480,000 left before we deplete that. And the sandbags, the budget approved was $250,000. We have about $75,000 left, which we want to keep some because there's going to be ongoing maintenance and replacement of sandbags that we will need down that area.
Desiree, did we get additional funds from the state? I think they had like $800,000 available. Did we get all of that or get additional funds more than they initially approved for us?
Not yet. We anticipate a response this week, early next week. I did talk to PRT today. They do have about $800,000. They were going to get me the exact amount that they have in their fund. And our goal would be to request, or what we have requested, is to get 50% of the $1.5 million effort, including sandbags and the ongoing scraping and trucking.
Okay.
All right, so at the Beechwood side, we're going through what I know some of you have heard us talk about shoal bypassing a lot, and some of you might not be as familiar with it, but we're in the worst stage, or beginning to be in the worst stage of this shoal bypass cycle. I'll get into that a little bit, but we've seen some significant erosion centered on that Beechwood East area, which is what we dealt with in 2016-17 before the last project, and had some erosion there actually before the first project, but it was in a good bit better condition in 2007. The shoal bypass cycle, I'll jump ahead to it, is periodically every 5 to 7 years, sand will move through Dewey's Inlet Delta, the delta will shift, and then a large quantity of sand will slowly migrate onto the beach. It's natural free nourishment, but as it does that, that sandbar offshore essentially acts like a breakwater, and that changes the way the sand moves along the beach around that area. Behind the shoal, the sand builds out, and you can see a picture there in the top right. So on the leeward side of the shoal, you get a large accretional area, but that sand is coming from the adjacent shorelines. So you get these erosional arcs on either side of that shoal attachment area. Sometimes it's more significant on one side than the other, and sometimes the shapes are a little different, but generally that's the process. Once the shoal attaches, and then that middle figure, the shoal's attached at the center, and you can actually see some of those darker areas on the shoal. That's equipment out there moving some of that sand to some of the erosional areas. That was a project that was done in the 90s. We did that project again in 2014 to move some of that sand and kind of accelerate that sand moving onto the beach. If we didn't do anything, that sand would eventually migrate onto the beach, restore the shoreline, but we can't tell you exactly how, if that sand's going north or south, or how much it's going either direction. But it's a process that can take a couple of years. But it can add up to 500,000 yards of sand, throughout that process. So the current situation, if I go back to this image, you can see the shoal offshore there. It's only 400 to 500 feet offshore right now, but it's affecting, the erosional arc is that area around Beechwood East. Until this shoal attaches, that area is going to continue to erode and have that erosional pressure. So this is not going to be a very quick fix. This is something that we anticipated, and we were working towards a permit to shift sand around from accretional areas on the island. That's part of what has been approved. So we're beginning that permitting process to try to put sand in this area so that we can kind of buy enough time to let this process occur without having to do a large-scale nourishment project. So our recommendations right now, and I got some other images, this is what it looks like today. You can see erosion is all the way up to the pool of this house in the foreground. It's within 20 feet of several houses there. So our initial recommendation would be to do a limited sand scraping effort just to try to get some sand back up against that escarpment and get some distance between the pool and some of these other structures. But then look towards sandbags as a longer term fix until either the shoal attaches and accretes naturally or we can implement a larger project.
Stephen, is your comment about Breach Inlet, we're in better conditions over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, is that true here? But given the shoal, it's a whole different story, obviously.
Yeah, it's a little different erosion pressure, but wave energy should be lower, so overall it should be in a better condition than we have the past, over the Thanksgiving week. It was a pretty rough week. So yes, but that erosion pressure is certainly going to continue.
And are you thinking that the temporary fix that we need to do until the shoal naturally reattaches, that will be years? Or can
Yeah,
you say?
So the hope is that if we're approved through this permitting process to move a significant quantity of sand, we're looking at moving anywhere from probably 100,000 to 200,000 yards of material to place in this area. By doing that, you're providing enough of a buffer to allow that shoal process to complete itself, attach, and then the natural processes would sustain the beach.
Is that scraping, Steve, or trucking?
It would be scraping or trucking from a different area of the beach, and what we were looking at and what we did in 2014 is there's a significant area of accretion. I'll jump ahead to show this. But that large bulge in the shoreline there, that's from basically 44th Avenue to 53rd Avenue. That's a lot of sand that has moved down from the 2018 project and has significantly advanced the shoreline several hundred feet. So possibly using some of that material to recycle back to the north, or if the shoal is attached at that point in some configuration, we may be able to actually get on that shoal and move that sand. So a combination of that strategy, where we're recycling some of that sand, is what we're proposing in the permit. The benefit to the area is if we harvest sand from that accretional zone shown here and move it to the north, it kind of puts it back up at the head of the river and will come back to that area in the future. So it's kind of a sustained sediment supply for that area, because I know it'd be a significant concern for the owners in that area. Are you taking my sand? But that's, in the long run, it's a benefit to them. But we're looking at trying to have a public meeting to lay out this plan, to notify the public and kind of give them a chance to ask questions and kind of get on board with the project before we get too far along with it.
Okay, and one last clarification for this. This is the area that's within a quarter mile of public access, so it is eligible for public funds. Is that correct? No?
No.
It's not.
The line, I have to go back and look, but you have to measure up from, I think, 57th.
Seventh.
So it's a portion of it may be in that area, but I don't think it extends all the way up to Beechwood.
But that's just around state funding,
Okay.
not our beach renourishment fund.
Okay, so that would, I just,
Yeah, the
thank
city's
you.
beach renourishment fund is not limited to any particular
Right.
public access areas,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned.
And Stephen, just for, to clarify the timeline, the permitting process for the shoal management process is underway. Our goal is to have an application ready by the end of the year and have a public meeting in January with folks around that project area, very similar to what we did a few weeks ago for the Breach Inlet folks. So that'll be our plan, our next steps on the shoal management piece.
Yeah, and just for clarity, because I know we get a lot of residents here from Beechwood East, that's for the shoal management, not the redistribution or sandbags or scraping or trucking. That's more immediate.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the recommendations for short-term emergency work that we want to be prepared for. We would need council approval for some funds to do that emergency work. The shoal management project, the earliest that we would be able to start work, assuming that we get a permit from the state, would be next fall of 2024.
And Stephen, I don't know if I heard an answer to Jan's question, and I know it's a best guess from y'all at this point. The attachment of the shoal is,
I'm estimating 12 to 18 months.
oh, sorry, got it.
It's a little unpredictable.
Yeah.
The higher tides actually help move it on a little faster because it stays underwater more. But yeah, It can move up to 1,000 feet a year. It's less than 1,000 feet from the shoreline. It can slow down as it gets closer to the beach, as it gets more elevated. But I would think within the next 12 to 18 months, it will likely be attached or very close to being attached. But as far as recommendations go, I mentioned the limited sand scraping. I also think that sandbags are probably going to be the best long-term solution, so we're not constantly dumping sand that's going to quickly erode. For this area, I would recommend those other bags that we talked about because they're likely to be in place longer, and they are easier to maintain as far as you can shift them around. If they do move or become buried, we can move them a lot easier without them tearing. The current bags are just less able to do that.
When you say other bags, can you clarify what you mean?
They're still 1 cubic yard bags. They are approved by the state, but rather than being that white kind of plasticky material, this is more of a geotextile fiber material. They are lower and longer, so they're kind of a flatter shape. So they stack a little better and are a little less likely to be to roll over if the water does get up to them. They are a good bit more expensive for the material, but I think in the long run you're probably coming out better because you'd have to replace less of them, and you can shift them around rather than having to start over with new bags.
Well, sorry.
So you're saying the new ones that you're using, they're holding up better? You know, how's it doing down at Breach Inlet?
At Breach Inlet, they switched to a different manufacturer of bags halfway through. That those bags do tend to hold up a little bit better. But as you get them closer to the dune, and we're trying to maintain that line further landward, then they're holding up a lot better and doing a better job of protecting the dune.
Well, and Katie, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, just the ones down at Breach Inlet, that's not the new ones.
No,
Because that was conscious decision, because it's a temporary project, we got a bigger thing
I understand the
coming.
new
Yeah.
ones are up at Beechwood.
Right.
Not
Beechwood,
at,
yeah.
I knew that, yeah, not at Breach Inlet. But that's the material ones, not the plastic ones.
Okay,
And
how long of a stretch, houses or feet or whatever you want to measure it in, are we talking about doing the temporary on?
At Beechwood, there's about 600 feet of properties between, there's a couple of properties around Seagrove that have a armor stone revetment, so we're not allowed to place material there or place bags there. There's about 600 feet of properties, and then there's a property that has a timber bulkhead. We also can't place, you can't place sandbags in front of an erosion control structure. And then there are 2 or 3 properties north of there that aren't within that 20 feet criteria now, but could be with additional erosion. So we're looking at 700, 750 feet right now.
And do you have an estimated cost to do what you're talking about doing here?
Right now, I'm assuming around 300,000 would be sufficient to get an initial revetment in place and maintain it for a little while. I need to do some more calculations to update the quantities, and that was kind of something we looked at today, but that's a ballpark.
And we have excess cost, we haven't spent yet on the sandbag project as well, but we expect to use that on Breach Inlet prior to the end of the core project?
Yes, sir,
Yeah,
because we
okay.
have to maintain them. We've been replacing some, and we also have to remove them before the core project, so there'll be a cost associated with that.
So what we're talking about here is an additional 300,000 of funding to take care of this 700 feet area on a temporary basis.
And that work will require the state issuing a new emergency order, which we've already requested that. The state representatives are coming tomorrow to measure the area and make sure that it meets the 20-foot threshold that is required by the state. And we would need to wait until that emergency order is issued to do either scraping or installation of sandbags.
How soon do you think we would be able to get that notice? Any idea?
Usually it takes a few days, but I don't know.
Thank you.
And with these bags, there is a lead time. I think they have 75 or so available very quickly, but then it may take a week or 2 to get the material sewn together to make the quantity we need.
So Stephen, the plan would be to, if approved, that we would do some scraping between the time they have the ability to order and get the additional sandbags for installation.
Correct.
When do you think the scraping would start at Beechwood?
If it's approved by the state, Collins, if, they're selected or approved on an hourly rate, then they could be there that day with their bulldozer. It would be a little bit more limited scraping project than what was done last time. They could do it again, but it would be done with the dozer. It wouldn't be done with the trucks and the excavator like the first project.
One additional question is, where would you enter to do the project? Last time you entered on 25th and went all the way down the beach. Is there a closer access point that you could do this work from?
53rd is a closer point. It's grown in a fair amount over the past 5 or 10 years. That has been the main access for any of the equipment for the prior projects. They felt like 27th was just an easier access to navigate with their trucks, because you do have to offload the low boy out at Palm Boulevard, and they're trying to be careful to protect the streets and things. But the regardless of the bag type, placing bags in that area is a little more complicated than the breach inlet area, just because of the access. So you're likely to have slightly higher unit costs.
Yeah, and Stephen, to John's question, you may know, in Wild Dunes, the property owner's beach house is under complete repair. So, I mean, I don't know if we could piggyback and use that
Yeah,
path for a while or
that
not.
access has been very skinny lately, but if they're
Yeah.
doing a repair project, they may be open to us fixing it for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot closer than 27th, but just food for thought.
I believe that's all the slides I have. Desiree, what did I miss?
No, you got it all.
Can I just make one clarifying comment? During citizens' comments, there was we're spending $10 million at Breach Inlet, and just for clarity, I think Stephen made a comment at the public meeting we had at the Exchange Club on that particular project. We're getting $10 million worth of sand from the Army Corps, essentially, so we're not, the city's not paying $10 million to re-nourish that in. That we just, good fortune with good relationships with Stephen's firm and the Army Corps, that we're able to get a value of roughly $10 million worth of sand that they're giving to us, so.
And that includes Sullivan's Island, right?
Sullivan's would be an additional.
Yeah, that's
amount.
additional.
That would
That's
be
just our
quantity.
piece.
And also, I think to your point, Mayor, I think it's important to understand that the reason this is a beneficial use project that the Corps is doing, and their primary goal is to create more space in their sediment sites on the intercoastal. So they are removing some of that sand that we know it's beach compatible to the beach for beneficial use. They know we need it. They need the space, so they're going to be removing it, and that's why the city's not paying for the portion of the project that the Corps is doing.
Yeah. Stephen, can you put your recommendation summary slide back up? Well, because it's going to kind of lead into the next item on our agenda. Other questions for Stephen? Thank you, as always. We're going to have to get you office space here soon, aren't we? So our next item under new business, a number of these we've talked about at workshops. We'll move through fairly quickly. Some are new, like this first one, a consideration of additional funding for beach restoration work for the areas between Breach Inlet and 314 Ocean Boulevard and between 12 and 17 Beechwood East. Desiree, I don't know if you want to recap kind of what we're looking to spend. I know Stephen's kind of got it up here on.
So the work at Breach Inlet that has already been approved by council, the 1.25 to continue to restore and maintain that area through the timing of the Army Corps project early next year, we still have funds available. We have about $400,000 left. So I don't think that we're at a point that we need to request additional dollars. It depends, weather dependent, if we continue to get hammered by these tides and the sand that we're bringing in and trucking in is going away. We may need to come before you all to do that, but at this point, we don't think we need to. The additional request of $300,000 would be something that council needs to approve. We would need to get bids from a contract, we would need to get the emergency order from the state first to allow us to do this emergency work, and after that, we would select a contractor. We have a contractor on the island doing work for the city, so we anticipate the mobilization to be rather fairly quickly and the quotes to be similar, if not favorable. for that work, but that is work that has not yet been authorized, and we would need authorization from council in order to do that.
And is the best way to go about this, based even on what you have today? I mean, approve an amount up to 300,000?
Correct, and
then
not
if we
to
need
exceed.
something more, we'll come back at it?
We need an action item on that tonight.
We do.
Make a motion to approve 300,000?
Second.
Jan?
Would these funds come from the beach renourishment?
They would be funded by the Beach Preservation Fee Fund.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
Do we just need to say an up to? I mean, just to
Up
be,
to-
yeah.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
yeah. You okay with that? Up to 300,000?
Of course.
Other questions, other comments? Desiree, you good? No. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Stephen, thank you again, really. I know your team has been here every day, multiple times a day sometimes, so thank you for that. Item B is discussion and consideration of wage and compensation study and recommendations. I know Desiree and team has worked on a whole lot of material for us that we have in front of us. I'd like to just give a quick recap, and John, I'm going to ask you from the administration committee just to give us a little bit of feedback as well. You know, we did the first wage and comp study 2 years ago, which was the first one done by the city in ever, certainly maybe 20-plus years, first time a wage and comp study had been done. As a result of that, we made significant changes to our public safety world, pay structure. We added some leave time, we added some holiday times, just to remain from a competitive standpoint. And our commitment at that point was to, revisit every couple of years from a wage and comp study standpoint, and that's kind of where we are now with Evergreen, who did our first, our external consultant that did the first study has done the second one. The market has moved fairly quickly since we did our first study 2 years ago. A lot of municipalities have done what we did a couple of years ago, particularly in the public safety world, along with other staff, in making changes and additions and adds to their base pay and different ways they've structured it. Administration committee met last week with our consultant. I know there's still some open questions as far as data and kind of how we got from point A to point B, if you will. I think all 9 council members would agree, not to speak for everybody, but having enough conversations, I think all 9 would agree there is certainly urgency to make this happen on behalf of our employees and take care of our folks. But I think this is going to be a significant spend on the city's part. And, whether it's $5 or $500,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, it needs to be impactful and it needs to be spent well. So I don't want our employees to walk away tonight at all thinking we're not taking this serious or going to make something happen. We will make it happen effective 1/1, and we'll talk about kind of what's next steps from an administration committee. So John, you want to provide a quick update from y'all's meeting?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that I do feel the committee has a sense of urgency around this and a commitment to make sure we get it right. The administration committee did put this on the agenda. The primary purpose of the agenda was to interview candidates for open positions. This was kind of added at the end, and we had an hour. And we did have Evergreen there, the consultant. And I don't think an hour was enough time to get the data that we needed to how they got from point A to point B. I left there feeling uneasy that we really didn't get enough information to be making the kind of decisions that we're making. I mean, compensation is such an important part of what we do. And it's such an emotional issue that we have to get it right. And I think we're committed to get it right. I just don't think we have put enough time into it to making sure we understand the data. The premise of the study and of the changes is to change the pay ranges for the employees. And this was done on a study of surrounding area, well, there was 15 market peers or municipalities that were surveyed, and we've received various results, I mean, from the different ones. I think we need to dig in a little bit more and understand that before we can decide how the pay ranges should change and what proposals. There's a list of different proposals from Evergreen, the consultants, that I think we need to wade through. So my recommendation is that we put this back to the committee, let them dig in a little bit deeper. I think I'm committed to meet as many times as we have to meet between now and the end of the year or even by the middle of December, because then you start getting into some tough holiday times. But between now and the middle of December, to meet with the committee, with department heads, with staff, with the consultant, and whoever else we need to get the right amount of data and come up with the right solution so that it meets the needs. The last thing we want to do is spend money and then have an effect that we didn't want to happen because we rushed into it. So that's my recommendation, that it goes back to committee and that we hold a special council meeting sometime mid-December, that we get this out and approved by council to go forward with a 1/1 implementation date.
And I think, just to add one more comment on John's, there's already a administration committee meeting set up for Thursday this week to continue that process. There may be another one next week. And what I would also like to just pile on with you, John, is poll council tonight to see if December 18th works for a special committee meeting at the Monday, that we can target that to have a singular topic special city council meeting just on this wage and comp, and give you guys essentially another 3 weeks. And because to your point, we need to be sure it's sustainable. We need to be sure it's affordable from a city standpoint, but I think you have heard, at least from two of us at this point, that we are absolutely committed to make this happen. So what does the 18th look like for council?
Good for me.
Good.
Good for me.
Good for me.
Good for me.
Good, good. I think we've at least got a quorum to make that happen then, so if we can calendar that. Desiree, I would appreciate that. What any other, I know there's two other committee members here, anything else? Yes, Rusty, go ahead.
I mean, I can't really add to what John says. I'm 100% on board with doing what we need to do between now and the 18th to get back to council and get some recommendations in front, and look forward to working with the department heads and getting some input on all the levers we can pull.
Yeah, I would just say that I'm echoing exactly what Councilmember Bogosian and Councilmember Pierce said. We had a lot of information at Administration Committee, and we had some communication issues too. We had Evergreen that was attending, in a Zoom meeting, and it was difficult to really get to the points that we wanted to get to in terms of questioning. And so I think all of us walked away a little bit puzzled and a little bit uncertain about where we need to go with this. We all did walk away, though, with the same opinion that something needs to be done, and we need to get such an important issue that we need to do it and get it done before the end of the year. We had I think we had 81 survey responses out of our employee base, which is an extremely high response rate. And they basically told us they love working here, they love the location, they love their coworkers, they love the type of work they do, but simply, the pay and compensation is not where it should be in the marketplace. And so we owe it to all of them to really look at that and dig into it. And I'm open to do whatever I can do on the committee and council the rest of my term.
And John, I think too, you and I have talked about this, but just for further discussion, there are, I think 10 options maybe from Evergreen to look at different ways to implement this. I think council needs to be at a level that says, here's the amount we think we can afford, short and long term, to fix our issues, and then let Desiree and department heads go away and figure out how to allocate that money. I think for us to sit here and say it's a blanket X percent or X dollar is not going to create the equity issues that we're trying to fix in some of our pay ranges and some of our spots. So I know the committee will dig deeper, into that Evergreen study. But I think when it comes back to council, I think we agree on an amount and then let staff allocate that amount out.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Do we need action to defer it or just send it back to committee?
Yep, well,
Okay.
we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday.
Yep.
We'll schedule a meeting on the 18th.
Perfect. John, thank you, and committee, thank you all for the work and the work that's coming. Next 5 or 6 items we discussed in some detail at workshops, so I'm hoping we can move quickly unless there are additional questions or discussion that needs to happen. That's certainly fine. Item C is consideration of change order from Quality Enterprises for Phase 3 drainage projects in the amount of $31,356 to cover additional material quantities due to rotating junction box structure and additional paving quantities. And there was detail in your packet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
1 second, I need to make good notes for Nicole.
Oh, sorry. That was
Motion
I'm going to give it to
made
Kevin as
by
a motion.
Councilmember Popson and seconded by Councilmember Anderson.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next, item D, consideration of change order from Coastal Science and Engineering in the amount not to exceed $65,000 for ongoing engineering services related to the emergency beach work around the Breach Inlet area.
So move.
Second.
Desiree, you got Jan and Rusty?
Yes, sir. Yes. Oh, Jan and,
Jan motion.
I'm sorry,
Rusty second.
Councilmember Anderson.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item E, consideration of addition of the license registration module to Rentalscape agreement in the amount of $15,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Desiree, that was Popson and Anderson. They're on a roll.
All right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item F, consideration of recommendation from Environmental Advisory Committee to continue glass recycling program at an annual cost of $9,600.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It was Ward and Myers.
Got it.
Just trying to help Desiree.
I just have one comment on that. Last time the Fisher went out and I think received a grant to help fund part of this. I forgot that in the committee to ask them this, but we should ask them if that's still available for them to go out and try to get some funding for that.
There was a grant applied for last go-round, but they were not successful in getting it. But we could certainly ask
try
that they
again, maybe.
that they try again.
For the new year.
Yeah.
But the program's been very successful, right, Douglas?
Yes, yeah, they have confirmed that a lot of glass is being taken off this island and putting to good use.
I'm giving them a lot.
Yeah. A lot of glass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item G, consideration of installing apparatus bay fans and LED light upgrades in Fire Station 2 in the amount of $53,145.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That was Streetman and Anderson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item H, also covered at workshop, consideration of recommendation from the ATAX Committee of the following state accommodations grant requests for tourism-related expenditures. One, IOP Chamber of Commerce, Light Up Front Beach for $10,000. Mary Alice Monroe Limited, Wild Dunes Author Event for $20,000. YWCA Greater Charleston, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tribute Week VIP reception to be held at Sweetgrass Inn at Wild Dunes for $2,500. So we can do all those in one motion if you don't mind.
I'd like to.
Sorry.
I'd like to discuss the Chamber of Commerce, light up the front beach.
Need a motion?
Yeah, let's do a motion in a
Okay.
second, and we can.
Well,
go into
I think
discussion.
you wanted to take them all at once, so I
Oh.
guess I would recommend that we don't.
That's fine.
Okay.
So we can start.
So motion
Katie, go
to,
ahead.
Motion, you can do a motion to discuss
Yeah.
to discuss the. just
item
the-
H.
Item H. Is that one, I?
Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, motion to
HI.
discuss HI.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Katie.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that when the Chamber of Commerce was started, the municipal association explained to them that it's best that they stay out of politics and don't take sides in elections. And in this past election, they clearly took sides and specifically supported for candidates. They had meet and greets that they sponsored that were in favor of specific candidates. They had an issue that they were very vocal on. And so I think that they have, they've clearly stepped beyond the recommendation of the municipal association. So I just don't feel comfortable giving them money to spend, and I don't necessarily feel that the candidates that they supported should be voting to give them money. That seems awkward to me. So I also was down there this past weekend, and quite frankly, it just did not look that great. There were numerous lights that were already out. I feel like that we could do a better job of that area. I don't think it's the best. And I'm curious as to where it's being plugged in and how it's going to be maintained. And so I have quite a few issues with that expenditure.
Is there, were you at the committee meeting? Is there discussion around that or light can be shed, so to speak?
Not on whether or not the Chamber of Commerce is a political, has acted
Yeah.
as a political entity. There was discussion about the cost of maintenance. They are committing to maintaining it and replacing light bulbs as needed. Those lights are connected to the light system that is in Front Beach that is paid for by the city. The additional cost is very minimal.
Do we know what that is, Desiree? When you
What?
say minimal, there's 1,000 lights there that are being lit up, I think, 365 days a year, all night.
I don't have it in front of me. I could look at the budget that we have for Front Beach. There is a line item for electricity. That includes the public restrooms, the municipal parking lots, all the light posts down at Front Beach.
Are other businesses allowed to plug into our power?
No, I mean, it's not a business that's plugging in, and it's a beautification effort that was done at Front Beach that is connected to the light system that is out there.
Jan?
As the traffic engineer, my concern is it storm safe, and will it just come down the first time we have a major storm?
They
Have
were not
looked at that?
removed during the last storm, and they were not damaged during Hurricane Idalia.
If something did happen, since we're plugged into city electricity and say a fire occurred, are we liable? Is the city on the hook for liability?
I think that would be a question for legal counsel.
I just have one question. The $10,000, is it to cover is it to cover work that's already done or to cover a new stretch of lights?
Yes, as was it presented by the chamber when they presented to the ATAX committee, the new grant request is to cover placing lights along the land side of Ocean Boulevard where there are no lights currently. They placed lights along the ocean side of Palm Boulevard, and in the middle, they did not have enough funds, I guess, to finish the other part.
So
That is what the
could an
request
option
is.
be, I mean, if there's issues here, just the city to do it themselves?
We could.
To use the $10,000 of ATAX money and put the lights up?
The city could certainly do that if that is the will of council.
Well, up until 2015, there were no lights on the Front Beach at all. It was completely dark. It was very unsafe. And the city partnered with Dominion Energy to get the more permanent structures set up down there. I'm all in favor of anything that can make it safer down there. There was a mugging on the Front Beach, and a lady had her wallet stolen. A gentleman had his wallet stolen in 1994. And that was me. So I appreciate the safety aspect of it.
Yeah, this idea came up a few years ago. Y'all may recall, we started doing quarterly meetings with the businesses. Most of the ones that attended those meetings are from the commercial district on Front Beach, and it came up as an idea to bring some ambience, more lighting, and to beautify Front Beach. So it really stemmed from ideas from the businesses down at Front Beach. I guess when the chamber was formed, they took it up as a project that would benefit the commercial district and did so. They're coming to the city to request for funds to complete it. But if the will of council, I think the goal that the chamber would have is to complete the project, that if it would make better sense for the city to use the same funds and contract with the same contractor and have it installed, and certainly that is a path that would be available to us.
Yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, our staff has plenty of projects that are sitting there and a whole lot bigger. There's a contractor involved, and ATAX committee's already vetted this. I would propose to move forward, but Scott?
Well, I was just going to ask, I mean, I think when I read the proposal to the maintenance of the contractor is going to be every 3 months, and if we've got strings out and they're coming around every 3 months, what's going to happen within those 3 months? Are they just going to be out? And, I still would like to know about the liability question. I guess, I'm not opposed or for lights downtown. I'm not going to get into the aesthetics of it, but this seems to me like it might be a project that if we were going to light up our own Front Beach on our own property, that it should be a city project, especially just that way we can maintain it. It's our electricity. It's our asset. And I think that what we're, I'm a little bit concerned that we're letting one entity plug in to the city assets, for whether it's de minimis or not. But, how does that get decided? Who gets to use our power down there?
It's also cafe lights are not intended to be a permanent safety device. I mean, they're kind of a fun thing that you put in your backyard. And I feel like down the road, it's gonna be, they're not intended to last, they're not built to last, they're not commercial, they're not street lights. They're fun but, I think I can see that over time, it's gonna just start to look worn out and just not real professional looking. So that's,
Yeah, I mean, we're talking $10,000. We're spending a lot of time on 10 grand. I think we voted or
but it's more
not.
the aesthetic and the look of it and the entity that we're talking about giving this money to. I mean, I just don't,
Okay.
I just got a lot of problems with this whole project.
Rusty.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm looking at the email and the information that was provided by the chamber, I'm assuming, and all this was fully vetted by the ATAX committee when they had the meeting. But one of the things that they did also, before commencing the project at all, the chamber took proactive steps to ensure the feasibility and approval of their plans. They held meetings with key stakeholders, Fire Chief Oliverius, Police Chief Cornett, Public Works Assistant Director Acero, all involved, all reviewed, endorsed the project's concept, design, and installation. So there was a lot of collaboration that went on with it. So I think with the recommendation coming from the ATAX committee, I'm totally in favor of approving this.
Kevin, do you have a comment? Sorry.
Do we want to vote on them separately, or?
Yeah, I think that was definitely the motion to break them out separately and have a conversation, so.
So do we have a motion to approve the first one?
We need it.
Motion to approve HI.
Second.
Ward and Popson, Desiree.
Do you want me to do a roll call?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Councilmember Bogosian, Myers, and Pierce.
Yep. Item 2 is Mary Alice Monroe Limited, Wild Dunes Author Event for $20,000.
Motion to approve. Second.
If I may, Mayor,
Yes.
I would ask that the motion be, reflect the motion and recommendation from ATAX, which indicated that they would they're recommending approval upon receipt of documentation proving that they are a nonprofit 501c3 organization.
Do we need, Kevin, you okay to amend your motion?
Would you repeat that, please, Desiree?
That the approval of the grant of $20,000 would be contingent upon the city receiving documentation proving that they have completed the 501c3 certification.
Application,
Sorry.
not the certification.
So, that's right,
The
application.
1232.
Thank
Kevin,
you.
you're good with that amendment?
Yes, sir, I'm good.
Katie, you're good from a second?
Yes, what's the time, when's that supposed to happen? Is it gonna happen in
gotta
time?
be.
And as far as them getting the approval of a 501c3 status is doubtful. They say they've picked it up quite a bit. It used to take 6 to 8 months, maybe even longer. But the fact of the matter is, the law does have a revision. As long as you filled out the application, paid the application fee, 1230, I think it's Form 1232, and you send that in, or you file it online these days, as long as you've done that, and you are allowed to go out and solicit funds, according to the IRS code.
So the
And-
timing
Katie.
works,
And I,
Well,
Yes.
I
the
have-
event is,
because it's.
is in
February,
it's
January.
early 2024. I received a packet from Ms. Monroe this morning. I just haven't had a chance to review it, but I believe it includes the information that Councilmember Ward indicated. I just want to be able to review it and make sure that the record reflects the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, I reached out to her and explained the process. She has an attorney and a CPA working on it, but it's just normal, it's totally normal.
all right, so we've got a motion and a second contingent upon that happening. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Last item is the YWCA Greater Charleston, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tribute VIP Reception. Again, that's at the Sweetgrass Inn in Wild Dunes for $2,500.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That is Myers and Anderson.
Thank you.
Have a comment? I'd just like to say there was a question about whether this is a private or public event. The YWCA is a public organization that anyone can join, and there was a question about the event itself. The only limitation on it is that the capacity of the room is 180 people, but any member of the YWCA, anyone can join the YWCA, and anyone who is a member who is at a certain level will be invited to the event. So it is not a private event per se, but open to the public.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item I, discussion and consideration of parking management proposals. Desiree routed some additional information yesterday. Desiree, you want to update and?
Sure. I shared with you all the comparative report of the 4 proposals that you heard, and including in that document was the total scores from those that evaluated and attended the meeting with the presentations. According to that report and the scores, there are 2 firms that were the top 2, and I think the goal would be to narrow it down to 2 for the city to do a deeper dive in the financial benefit of the fee proposals. And those would be Municipal PCI was the number 1 respondent selected, and Pivot Parking was the number 2 in accordance with the scores.
From the scoring. Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
So you asking for us to pick one, or did you say
There's
just those 2? Or pick
Correct.
2? Okay,
Yeah, based on our feedback from the scoring sheet.
okay. So you're not asking us to pick one of
No.
those?
No, not at this point. We still have to review the total contract cost, projections of the fee structure, and make a decision based on that.
Motion to approve PCI and Pivot. Going forward.
Second.
That was Ward and Anderson. Additional comments or questions?
It's very clear.
What's the time frame on that?
Our goal would be to bring a recommendation first thing in January.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Last item, discussion and consideration of public dock and T-Dock. Again, Desiree provided the open bid data on the 3 bids in your packet yesterday, I believe it was. Desiree?
Yes, I'm going to split the 2. I want to talk about the public dock first. That project is budgeted in FY24. We included $1.7 million for that piece. We received bids mid last week. We're still going through it. The lowest bid that we received on this project is True Luck Construction. We had a lower bid that was received late and therefore not eligible to be considered by the city. We are preparing to make a recommendation for the city to agree and approve a contract to True Luck Construction. I would ask that city council approves a not to exceed amount of 1.7, which is the budget amount for the public dock. The base bids came back much lower than that, so we anticipate that even with some of the alternates that we are considering to add, we will be under budget. So I still don't have a final recommendation from ATM after reviewing all of the qualifications and the information in their bid package. But contingent upon receiving that, what we have seen so far is favorable. So contingent upon receiving that, I would like to be able to execute a contract once we do, without having to wait until January, when council convenes again. So my recommendation is for council to approve and not to exceed, an amount not to exceed 1.7, which is consistent with the budget. And I'll report once the final contract amount is agreed to.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ward and Myers. Scott, question, or were you
No,
trying
no,
to move it along?
Whatever works.
Just for the record, I've dealt with True Luck many a time, and they're a good, longtime local company, so I think we're in good hands.
Who made the motion? Ward and?
Ward and Myers.
Myers.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, and so now we're going to talk about the T-Doc.
Oh, sorry. I was ready to move.
T-Doc, y'all remember, our plan was to include this as a bid alternate. We do have some base, some activities that we included in the base bid, and that includes repairs to the fixed pier, the floating dock, an installation of a new electrical system, portable water system, and replacing all of the fire extinguisher pedestal. That amount comes to about $115,000. The budget in FY '24 is $200,000. There are some other items under alternates that we want to discuss with the tenants further and review further. There are some significant discrepancy between the three quotes. So we're evaluating whether there's some work that could be done separately. The city bidding it at a different time as a different project. So again, I'm requesting council to approve an amount not to exceed $200,000, understanding that we would be engaging True Lock for some of the components would not exceed that amount.
Which is, again, our budget amount.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, probably coming in less than that, so. Okay. We need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second. I'll get you.
Desiree, that was Myers and Hahn.
So just to be clear, though, are you saying that you may put parts of this out to bid again?
So for example, the big ticket item that we asked for an alternate bid is replacing all the decking along the pier and in the floating dock. The bid that we received back from True Lock, it amounts to almost a little over $120,000. The other bids were dramatically different from that. We think that we can get a better number by rebidding that portion separately and potentially in looking at what that would cost. If we include that to the current, to the base bid of the items that I listed earlier that were included, we would be over budget of our $200,000. So a lot of the work that would be done under the base bid would not be undone if we have to replace the decking, if we decide that we need to do that. We can do that without impacting the work. So that's the reasoning for us we feel like we can get a better number if we
Right.
do that separately.
John, you good? That makes sense.
Do we have the permit for the T-Doc?
Yes, sir?
Yep.
Okay.
We're ready to construct.
Yeah, that permit was different. It's a maintenance permit, so it didn't take us long as the public dock one.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item, boards and commissions report. Board of Zoning Appeals, no meeting in November. Planning Commission, minutes are attached. Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, minutes are attached. Environmental Advisory Committee, those minutes are attached as well. Item 7, ordinances, resolutions, and petitions, second reading, none. First reading by title only is ordinance 2023-12 to amend standing committees from January 1st, 24 through December 31st, 24.
Motion to discuss?
No discussion on first reading.
You can't discuss it all?
You can make a motion to discuss them. It would have to be approved. Typically, first reading is by title only unless there is a motion to specifically discuss first reading.
Motion to discuss?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Nay.
Scott, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify our direction on this. I think we talked about at the workshop that we're looking to extend this for 1 or 2 months into the first of the year so that the new council can have the discussion around the committees and the workshop structures and things of that nature.
No, this is written to do it for the full year. right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm just suggesting that maybe we, consider, I think we talked about this workshop, we were talking about a 30-day extension or a 60-day extension so that if we had any modifications to it, that we could have that modification.
But with any ordinance, we can modify it any time, right?
Yeah, if I recall the conversation from the workshop, I specifically asked that question, how should I draft this? And what I received back was drafted for the whole year with the understanding that at second reading, which would come in January after the new council was seated, that's when amendments could be considered on an ordinance.
Got it. Okay.
Not amendments. We cannot consider amendments at first reading.
And Scott, I think the thinking is, so our first committee meeting, we'll have one on January 2nd, but that's just inauguration and committee approvals. The first meeting would be end of January. So essentially, we'll go January without committee meetings.
So the second reading would be at the end of January?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So now, a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
That was Han and, you give it to Pierce.
Pops
I didn't say it.
Anderson.
Wasn't me. It had to be an Anderson.
Anderson, sorry. Anderson.
I think it was Anderson.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item, resolutions and proclamations. Resolution authorizing consumption of beer and wine, road closure, and amplified music at the Holiday Street Festival on
So
Dec-
moved.
Approved.
Second.
without waive reading.
All in favor?
Waive the reading.
Waive reading, and there is a second.
Yes.
Motion to approve
Second.
without reading.
That is Myers. I'll throw Han a bone, just,
I think he said it first, for sure. I just got excited
he just didn't know
about
what he
it.
was doing.
Rusty's getting slow.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
My
Opposed?
daughter's singing at it, so.
Oh, nice.
Next item, resolution to adopt the Charleston Regional Hazard Mitigation and Program for Public Information Plan.
Motion to approve by title only?
Waive reading, yep.
Yeah, waive reading.
Second.
That's Ward and Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. No need for executive session, there being no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Record at 7:16.
Okay, you picked up on it. I wanted to give you the honor.